This should be interesting. Fun fact, people that know me will confirm this. When I was a kid, I was told I could probably talk underwater, and when I was a pearl diver, I actually learnt to, so there you go. Right, where's that clicky thing, Dak?
Down here, look.
Righto. Pointing at that.
Tap that right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Righto. Now, firstly, I want to thank Jardine McDonald, who forced me to do this and put most of it together. So the good bits are his, and if there's any bugger ups, well, that's my fault. Okay, Country Downs, situated in the middle of the Dampier Peninsula there. It's an image of the homestead. It's a kind of unique piece of country, 1,000 mil rainfall, which is considerably higher than the surrounding area. That really presents its own set of challenges. When we took the lease on in 2003, we were told by the pastoral board it was unviable. I took that as a bit of a challenge, how 180,000 hectares of 1,000 mil rainfall country can be unviable. And, oh look, I'm still there after 20 years, so that's saying something. I wanted to share this image. Popped up on Facebook one day, and my first glance, I thought it was an old stone tank in the West Pilbara or something like that. Turns out it's a remnant Crusader fort, I think in North Africa, and I guess what really struck me about that image is a parable for all of our pastoral endeavours going to shit, basically. You look at that and think, well, why would you build that out there? And then hang on, how would you build that out there? And then how would you even feed the people to build it? So I guess, you know, it was a very strong image for me as far as a parable for what we can do wrong and how far the system can break. And again, looking around the landscape, as part of a tour, you'll see a snapshot out the window, and I think there's a lot of parallels for it that just because you're seeing something out the window doesn't mean it's how it should be or how it has been. It's just a snapshot in time. Right. How to use the pointer bit on this? Is that, or do we not? I'll just describe the image. So on the upper left there, you'll see that there's a lot of acacia regrowth there, and it reaches a point where it's shading out and suppressing the perennial grasses. On the right-hand side, you can see that's probably, in a successional sense, that's probably 18 months down the track from the left-hand picture, and it dominates and it locks up the country, and it's very fire tolerant and fire propagative, if that's even a word. So we're in this short cycle down here on the succession scale, and you're really not getting anywhere, and it's hot fires, frequent fires, and that was the cycle that property was stuck in when I took it on. That just gives you an idea of the severity of fire. So that was probably taken in about August 2 years ago. That was a backburn fighting a bushfire. Once you start to get fire going like that, there's really not much will pull it up. We've had fire at that time of year jumping 5 kilometres ahead of itself. So it's not a situation you want to be in, and as a result of that, we end up with a lot of this early burning going on to try and suppress that, but that in turn presents its own set of problems. No?
Pointed over this way.
Whereabouts?
Over this way seems to work.
Okay. Well, here's some examples of some of the fire effect we've had. Actually wasn't too bad a year, that one. I think the next one's significantly worse. Yeah, that was a ripper. So I think we got 98% burnt out over about 6 weeks. Yeah, that was heaps of fun. The one on the right there actually shows we had a fair crack that year. We actually did 70 kilometres of successful backburning diagonally across the property and down across the neighbours there, and managed to save ourselves a bit. But yeah, it's a massive challenge. Here's more pictures of lots of fire. And I guess the disclaimer I'd like to make on this is a lot of this, it just shows fire frequency, and I think more important than frequency, we need to be focusing on timing. Just because it's burnt doesn't mean that's a bad thing. This is a fire-adapted landscape. But what we're getting at here is, look how much fire is in that landscape. It is ridiculous. And this was a cycle we had to try and break, and by whatever means necessary. So the formation of the Dampier Fire Working Group was a big assist to us in that we're attacking the problem on a landscape scale, because this is a homogeneous landscape. There's no natural barriers in it. You know, I'd love a scalded flat or a river or something to be able to work off, but we don't have it. It's all just one big land system with no breaks in it. So what do we got here? This is, again, in my view, relatively poor land condition on the left, and on the right is significantly better. But if we look here, that was burnt all in the same year, and that's a graphic example of the difference in timing of fire. Early dry season favours the tap-rooted plants, and they just keep growing all through the dry, whereas your perennial grasses are shut down. So early season burning on the right, it's a far more productive and diverse system as far as we're concerned. Now that, I'm not just talking about fire on its own, we're talking about fire, rest, grazing. It's all part of the system, but, you know, we're talking about fire here right now. The upper image on the left, that, believe it or not, is 7 days after a fire. That's perennial ribbon grass dominated pasture. That's the kind of result we want. We're minimising bare ground. One of my big criticisms about all this early season burning, yes, it prevents the bushfires, but we're looking at bare ground for 7 or 8 months, and that's shocking for the environment, and it's not very productive from a pastoral point of view either. So that's upper left, that's 7 days, and that's probably at about 2 weeks, the lower one. It is unbelievable how quick this country recovers with rain. On the right, yeah, that's the following dry season. So you can see that we've suppressed a lot of this woody regrowth. In the background, you can see the tree canopy's healthy because it's a relatively cool, fast fire. So we're not buggering up the tree canopy, and we're really stimulating diversity in the landscape. I think I'm doing well here. How are we going for time? All right. Well, this is sort of acknowledgement to the rest of it and the fact that it's not just the fire. There's a few people sitting in the audience that have been crucial to my learning journey, and they'll be recognising a few of these images here. On the left-hand side, we're looking. That's training weaners on diversifying their diet, so they're improving their intake of secondary plants. Basically, it's like giving them a recipe book. They're not just eating the sweetest pastures, and if we can increase that percentage of secondary pastures that are being converted by those animals, well, that's helping ecological succession as well, because we're putting grazing pressure on some of the less desirable plants. An aid to that, in the centre there, you'll see the lick tub, and we cook our own charcoal, and we feed that with phosphorus as an aid to digestion to help those animals digest and bypass some of those toxic secondary compounds. There's some pictures of some adapted cattle there. Dung beetles, they're a huge aspect of things, and over the years I have learnt to stay away from chemicals, because regardless of what it says on the drum, it usually kills your dung beetles, and then you end up caught in this other horrible cycle of buffalo fly and all these other things. Our other little mates there, I think that's something out of a microscope that Jardine found in our soil and got very excited about. Yeah. Oh, look at that. I'm just about doing well here. The little land snails, obviously things like that don't really get on well when you've got a 70-kilometre fire front coming through the country. So that's a little nod to the rest of the ecosystem and how important we see it as part of contributing to our overall biodiversity, whether it's the little birds that come in and scratch around and move seeds around, or the insects, everything. It's all part of an active system, and I guess it's very, it's important to me because I saw that country when it was a green desert. There was nothing going on out there, and to be able to see different birds and animals coming back into that landscape is just so empowering. And, you know, I think it was probably 5 years there, believe it or not. I'd been there for 5 years before I saw my first pigeon. That's how buggered that landscape was. And then now we're seeing all these other things. I mean, this year, for example, there's thousands of those Wero parrots. Never seen them before. And, you know, the country's always got something to teach you year after year, and we don't know where the upper edge of landscape improvement really is. It's every time I think I get it going good, it gives me another surprise, and there's an opportunity to get it better. So I think that's the message for pastoralists out there. Just keep doing whatever you can and look at your results and build on those results. And I don't know where the upper limit of productivity is in the rangelands. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kurt. That was great. I'm sure there's a question.
No, we're good, really.
G'day, Katie Hay, DAF in Queensland. You've done a great job, obviously, and I hope this question doesn't ruffle any feathers of anybody else in the audience, but I was just wondering, it's a lease with WA, is that right?
Pastoral lease, yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, does the WA offer any incentive or anything like that for improving the country so much?
No. There is a stick effect, though, that if you bugger the country up, they tell you can't run as many cattle, which is fair enough.
Hi, Kurt, Robin Cowley with NT Primary Industries, and we've got that 30-year fire experiment at Kidman. So I really enjoyed your talk about fire, and this is an experiment that we have, which means we just apply the same treatments all the time, and they've always been June, early dry, and October, late dry. So we actually don't really know the impacts of the early wet season burning that you've been applying, and so my question to you is, it seemed like, I just want to confirm, that was actually a pretty good way to clean up those shrubs while looking after the taller woody plants. Is that right?
Yeah, well, as an outcome of seeing some of your plots up there years ago on a field trip, it was an interesting experience for me because, I mean, obviously it's a different land system and different pasture types and all of that, but I guess it's a kind of a prescriptive approach that has been taken in that long-term trial. And I guess as a discussion I had with Alan Savory years ago was that there is no recipe, it's philosophy, it's art, it's not science. We've just got to see what our results come out and build on positive indicators. So that's been my approach. I've tried many things, many different methods. Some work and some don't. And it's just something that it's ridiculous in retrospect when you think about it, that you think you try all these different things and hang on, why don't I have a good hard think about what happened in nature? What created these grasslands that the first explorers saw when they came through? And how do we mimic that? And that's essentially what we're trying to do, is to try and, we get glimpses from the past, and I've had people say, the early explorers, they were bullshitting because they just wanted everyone to go out there and be pastoralists. Well, that's not true. And we heard from Alejandro about it, grass the height of the saddle. And, you know, we need to take that stuff, take it as it was intended. It's real information.